Hey guys, it's Marshall from Geecrack here, and today we're going to be doing a full overview, breakdown, and rigging tutorial on the Geecrazy. The Geecrazy is my first signature bait from Geecrack. It's 18 inches long, super skinny, designed to be fished on a Neko Rig, and it has never-ending action that drives bass crazy. So let's hop right into the rigging. Okay, let's dive straight into this. So we're gonna start out with probably the most important part about rigging this worm, and that is going to be the band. The best way to rig this worm is Neko Rig. So you're gonna be using a 5mm band. You're going to need a band tool, little pair of band pliers. This is from Valley Hill. There's also a couple other options. This one's from G7 tube pliers. There's a whole bunch of these on the market. It doesn't really matter. I like the ones with a smaller tip just because you are using a pretty small band. And then as for the band, my preferred one is this Valley Hill 5mm band. Again, there's other options for this out there on the market. Here's the Genius 5mm band, Gambit G7 5mm band. There's a whole bunch of these. Just pick your poison. I like the Valley Hill one, but they all work about the same. Basically what you're gonna do is you're going to open up the band like this, push the worm through, and then pull it all the way to this little fat abdomen part right here, which was designed to sit the band on. So basically it goes from 4mm to 5mm, and that extra little thickness right here for the band gives the worm a little more strength. Put it on just like that, and that is going to be where your hook is gonna go. The next thing we're gonna do is grab the hook. I am gonna use a size 1 Doogie Talisman. I really like this hook. I think it's super strong. This is the heavy guard version with the titanium weed guard. Again, there are other options for this. Another option that's good is the Owner Sniper Finesse Weedless. Something I would recommend is the titanium guard. I think it is very weedless and just easy to pull through. The hookup ratio is great, but any weedless Neko hook will do you a good job there. What I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna hook into the worm. I'm just gonna go underneath the band like this, slide underneath the band, and come out like that. You wanna make sure that the flat end of the worm is down so your hook is facing up. We're gonna put the nail weight in this end, so when it's falling, you don't want the hook to be down grabbing on the bottom. You want the hook to be facing up. Make sure not to hook the worm because you don't want to cause any tears, and that will increase the longevity of your worm. Basically, hooking underneath the band will allow the hook to slide around and won't cause any tears to your worm. Next part is going to be the nail weight. Now, this is my favorite nail weight. This is from Genius Project. It's a 1.5 gram nail weight. Now, I will go up to the 1.8 size occasionally when I'm fishing a little deeper. And if I'm fishing more than 20 foot of water, I might go up to 2.5, but that's very heavy. 1.5 is about the standard size I use. Like all the other stuff, a standard push-in nail weight like this is totally fine. Make sure you use a tungsten one. It's just more dense, it's gonna be more sensitive, and this worm is very thin, so you need to fit as much weight into the worm as possible without damaging it. This nail weight right here is a screw-in type, so basically there's gonna be a head that hangs out on the end. You're just gonna push it into the end and then start twisting. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be beautiful, as long as it goes in there. Just twist it in until it sits flush with the worm, and there you go. So again, there's gonna be a little head sticking out right there. The reason I prefer this type of nail weight is because you can actually fit more weight onto here without damaging the worm, and I think that that screw-in type just holds really well on this type of plastic. But that is the complete Geecrazy Neko rigging right there. That is my preferred way to do it. Like I said, feel free to kind of experiment with what brands you're using for the tackle, but this is how you do it right here. This is how you're gonna have the best success on the water. So now that you guys know how to rig the Geecrazy, we're gonna go over a little action tutorial. This is how I like to work and fish the bait. I'm gonna kind of explain where I like to fish it, when I like to fish it. So we're gonna start out with the setup. Very light bait casting setup. 7-pound fluorocarbon is recommended. You can go up to 8, maybe 6 is fine. I like 7. Disclaimer, I'm throwing it on a bait caster, but I would highly, highly recommend you just fish on a spinning rod. This is my take on a finesse lure. Although it is 18 inches, it's still very, very light lure. It's not very heavy. It is difficult to cast. It's gonna be much easier to cast on a spinning rod. So if you're trying on a bait caster, fair warning. All right, send her out there. Long cast. My favorite time to fish this worm, and pretty much the only time I'm gonna pull it out, is in the heat of summer. Starting in June, all the way through August, maybe September, the bite for the longworm is gonna be very, very good. I'm not really sure what it is, but something about those summertime bass in the deep, they just absolutely love to eat a longworm. The best way to retrieve it, in my opinion, is not to move it at all. Move it very minimally. So what I'm gonna do is kind of come taut to the worm, not super tight, and I'm just gonna give it 2 hard pops, and I'm gonna let it fall back to the bottom. The less you do with this worm, the better. As it's sitting down there, as the Neko Rig hits the bottom, it's curling up, it's moving around by itself. I'm gonna give it 2 hard pops, let it sit there. I try to let it sit there from 3 to 5 seconds. Definitely less is more with this worm. The action is gonna be better. The longer you let it sit out there, really let it soak, give it 2 pops, and then just let it do its thing. It's gonna move on its own and get bit. The next thing I like to talk about is hook setting. Now, yes, this worm is 18 inches long. A lot of times when it's falling to the bottom, it's gonna coil up and be sort of just in an easier to eat presentation than if it was just laying out fully. With the hook set, you do have to adjust a little bit. I would highly recommend when you're fishing this bait and you get a bite, do not immediately swing. That is a good way to get the worm ripped in half. That is a good way to swing on a bluegill. Most of the time, if a bass eats this lure, it's gonna inhale the whole thing and it's gonna have the whole thing in its mouth within a second or so. But just to make sure you don't have a bluegill or a 5-inch bass picking at the tail, because this happens with every finesse bait, whether you're fishing the Imokimushi, the Q-bomb, anything like that, you're gonna have smaller fish peck at it. I do something called the bluegill check, right? It's very, very simple, right? As I'm working it, just say I get bit, donk, right? All I'm gonna do is open my bail. I'm gonna keep tension on the line, not too much, just a little bit to keep it taut. And if you have a bluegill chewing on your bait, if you give it any sort of pull, it's gonna let go immediately. Then you know that was either a bluegill or a tiny little bass, then you continue working your bait. But if you have a bass eating it, you're gonna know it's gonna be a solid force pulling back, right? And all I do is I keep my bail open, I give it a solid 1, 2, 3, I click and just reel into it. That's all you have to do. Reel into it, keep your rod tip up, and then you got them on. Most of the time they're gonna be hooked in the corner of the mouth, top of the mouth like that. I really haven't had any issues with the hookup. I just got bit. Bluegill. Jesus, see the bluegill hitting it? Okay, so there's a bluegill hitting it, right? My bail is open, and I can tell this is a bluegill because, again, I add a small amount of tension, and it's not on there. That's all you gotta do. That's all you gotta do. Now you know, bluegill, it's off. Even though it is 18 inches long, like I said, it's gonna curl up on the bottom, and any sizable bass, 1, 2, 3 pounds and over, is gonna be able to fit this whole worm. Just one inhale, it just goes in. So the main takeaways here, number 1, work it very slow. Don't move it, you don't need to shake it or anything like that. It's moving on its own. And number 2, do the bluegill check. Just make sure you don't have a bluegill biting it so you're not ripping worms all day. It's gonna be frustrating. So just make sure you're being patient, do the bluegill check, and let it sit around down there. Really soak this worm, and you're gonna have success out there on the water on those super hot summer days when they're not biting anything else. And then, whoosh. Good.